Are the Tuatha Dé Danann the deities of my ancient forebears, as some like to believe, or at least pretend them to be? Or are they strange and mysterious supernatural race of kings and queens our legends and lore make them out to be? Or is the truth somewhere in between?
Well, I tend to put more credence in the legends and lore of a people than I do in the attempted imaginations of academics and people like that.
Oh.
I mean, it's easy to presume that they must have been gods, but we have no real evidence for that. The only evidence we have are the stories themselves. And they are not gods. In fact, if anything, they're more the aristocracy of the fairy folk than they are gods.
Okay. Based on their powers, they're not
based on their powers and the fact that in the Irish lore and literature we have now, when the knowledge of Christ comes to Ireland, they're definitely subordinate. They're not deities at all. And, again, what you have are academic figures and other folk, neo-pagans and Wiccans and so on, who will look at these stories, these tales, and read back into it their own views on what must have been. So, for instance, you've got a fairy that haunted a lake. Well, obviously, she must have been the goddess of the lake in pre-Christian times. No, she doesn't have to be. She might very well just have been the fairy of the lake in pre-Christian times.
Okay.
And God help us, she may still be the fairy of the lake in Christian times, or in post-Christian times,
Post-Christian
as
times.
Ireland has become now.
Wow.
In which case, I don't want to run into her. I'm not going anywhere near that lake at night. Forget it. You say she always appears on Midsummer's Eve? I ain't going anywhere near there. Forget it. No.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like you're agnostic, but don't count out the lore. Is that what you're basically saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Again, oral tradition has time and again proved itself to have a validity that scholars deny it. And of course, the example I've used time and time again, and I'll use it probably to the day I die, is Troy. Heinrich Schliemann, at a time when everybody said, oh, Troy's a myth, never existed, blah, blah, blah. And bearing in mind that we know that for 400 years, the Iliad was strictly oral. It wasn't written down for the first 400 years. Well, see, it's because people were trained to remember things. They had whole casts of people in different cultures that would sit around memorizing long poems and lists of things.
Wow.
And they really relied on their memory to a tremendous degree, to a way that we just can't now. If you remember in Lord of the Rings, when the two hobbits get captured by the Ents, and he gives them this long list, learn now the list of living creatures. That's actually a takeoff on how the bards and druids and people of that kind in days gone by would remember stuff. And they'd have these long, gigantic lists of things that they'd remember. So for 400 years, the Iliad was strictly oral.
Wow.
Finally gets written down. And then hundreds of years after that, Schliemann uses it as a guidebook to find the ruins of Troy. Now that tells you something about the oral memory. Now it doesn't mean the oral memory is always perfect. It doesn't, I'm not saying that by any stretch.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that it frequently has a lot more validity than scholars are willing to give it.
Yeah.
And certainly more than scholars often have, especially if they're paid by the word. But I'm sorry, I digress. So,